4 years ago today, August 9th, Ferguson, Missouri became a city rife with riots that lasted for 13 days. Out of that chaos rose a hero who bridged the divide between black and blue by literally walking across it.
Captain Ron Johnson, a 31-year veteran of the Missouri Highway Patrol, became an unlikely hero in 2014, 5 days after the fatal shooting of Michael Brown. As riots ignited throughout the city of Ferguson, Captain Ron was appointed by the governor with the seemingly impossible task of restoring peace between an angry community and the local police. In his memoir, 13 Days in Ferguson, Captain Ron recalls the turbulent days and nights he encountered while helping to stabilize the city of Ferguson and how his faith sustained him through it all.
Welcome to the 700 Club, Captain Ron Johnson. It's great to have you here, Ron.
Great to be here. It's an honor.
You know, this was, reading your book just took me back there like that. It's been 4 years, but that was such an unexpected occurrence in every way. In what happened between the Michael Brown, the young man who was shot, and the reaction that happened after that in Middle America. Tell me what that was like for you at that time as you came upon this.
I couldn't believe it. It seemed like it was something out of a bad dream, that this could not be happening in my community or in our country.
Yeah, and then it seemed, as you wrote in the book, each day, instead of waning, it escalated. Were you surprised by that? At some point, did you think it was just going to kind of die down and then you'd have to pick up the pieces and go on?
No, I think the first day that I walked out on the streets of Ferguson, I knew. I said there was something that I had never seen before. And I looked up to God and I said, how are we going to make it through this?
What was so shocking, I think, for you was that you didn't hear until you were in the middle of a press conference, not your press conference, it was the governor's, that you were going to be put in charge of all of this. And that had to be shocking. I mean, tell me what you were feeling at that moment as you hear him say, and I'm going to give the leadership of all of this to Captain Ron Johnson.
Well, the first thing that came to mind was, God, why me?
Yeah, I think we all would have said that. But then what? Then what?
But then after I found out and after I went back to Ferguson and got on the streets, I didn't ask God anymore, why me? Because it didn't matter why me. But I was glad that it was me.
Yes.
And I looked at it as an opportunity and a humbling moment.
But the press just landed on you right after that announcement was made and wanted to know very directly, what are you going to do that's going to be any different than what's been done so far? How did you decide what to do?
Well, initially they said, what is your plan?
Yeah.
And I wanted to say, well, I just found out 30 minutes ago that I was going to be in charge.
No mercy.
But I said I'd do something different. And so then after I left that press conference, I knew that I needed to go back to Ferguson and walk the streets and hear the voices and see the faces to understand what I needed to do.
Yeah. So what happened as you walked the streets? Tell me how things began to unfold.
Well, I walked the streets, and the first time I get to the march, everybody did not want me to march. But then I walked down the street, and this lady comes out of the crowd with a big hug.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like an angel had come out. And I would later find her name was Angela. And then after that hug, I walked down, and a group of ladies asked me if they could pray for me. And at that moment, I just felt that I was going to be okay. Yeah. You know, people asked why didn't I wear my vest? And I said that I didn't need that vest because I felt I already had this shield from that prayer.
You know, you understand, of course, in a riot scenario, why it's necessary for people involved in keeping the law to wear protective gear. But it does really, I'm not suggesting that people shouldn't when a riot is taking place, but it does really separate you from the population, and hearing their hearts, having them able to speak to you about their concerns. I mean, part of what was, I think, so just angering to people was the fact that Michael Brown's body lay in the street for 4.5 hours after he'd been shot. But that was because of fear. I mean, people were afraid to, people that normally would go in and remove the body were afraid to do that. How do you overcome things like that?
And that was true. That's a true statement. But also, I think that you have to say that you can understand the pain.
Oh,
because I had to ask myself, what if that was my son?
Amen.
And so sometimes no excuse is good enough. And I still believe to this day that we should have done something different.
Yeah.
And that no one's child should lay there.
Hindsight's always 20/20,
Yes.
but when things happen like this, where they're so explosive, they're in some ways somewhat predictable, but this was the community that, I mean, you grew up there.
Right.
This was the community in Middle America where people went to work, where they went to church on Sunday, where parents were involved in the lives of their children. I mean, it wasn't a place where this kind of thing normally happened. But you say in your book early on, and I think this is such an important statement for us all to consider, that everyone has bias. And having the bias isn't the issue, it's what you do with it. How do you speak to that in our culture today? There's so much angst, it seems, racially, a lot of racial tension in the country today. What do you say to people after experiencing what you experienced?
You know, I say that we can find value in each other. And those things that we see and we hear, we need to try to experience those. And those are lessons that we can learn, and those are things that we can embrace that will make us better. Mm-hmm. And I agree, we all have them. But it's what we do with them. I think we learn from those. I think we need to see each other for who we are.
It was interesting to read and hear how you had to contend with that early on, because of course you're involved in a force with people who are black, people who are white, and under the tension and stress of this situation, and even being elevated to the position that you were of taking charge, you kind of see some of your friends fall by the wayside, and things come forward that I think maybe you didn't even realize existed, or maybe hoped didn't, in your relationship with some of the people who were white on the force. I mean, you had to swallow some stuff in all of that and move on. What is it that we should all learn from that, take into account, not be easily offended, to be able to do something that matters in the midst of it all?
Well, I would say the toughest part of the road is the middle part of the road. And sometimes we all have to get on that middle part of the road.
Yeah.
And reveal ourselves and give us, and try to pull things together. But, people are going to see us for who we are.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I walked that middle of the road, and I think people wanted me to take sides. And I didn't want to do that. And I think for me to take sides would have been selfish as me as a leader. Because I needed to take whatever came with that, whether that was criticism. Mm-hmm. I'd say today that some people see me as a traitor on both sides of the road. Yeah. But I'm okay with that, because my main mission doing that, Ferguson, and being the commander, was to make sure that on both sides, everybody got to go home. And there was no blood on my hands, and another life was not lost.
And sometimes when you walk the middle of the road, you gotta, no matter what's going on in your heart or your stomach, you just gotta walk tall. And your dad really set that example for you, and you named some other leaders over time that have done the same. And I'm sure you must have felt a sense of that as you walked down the middle of the road, as you were seeking to bring some peace and some resolution to some of this. Are you teaching your kids those things? Are you?
I do. We talk about just keep walking.
Yeah.
And I think I'm still on that journey. I don't know where it's going to lead me, but I'm still walking. Yeah. To try to make that difference.
I mean, in a sense, in the world that we live in today, we all need to be walking that journey one day, one step at a time. It's an amazing book. It's so well written. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think you will too. Captain Johnson's book is called 13 Days in Ferguson. It'll take you back to 4 years ago when this event occurred. And it'll also challenge you in your thinking. Just as a person that's a citizen of the United States, and what our role needs to be in being a part of the community of citizenship here. You can also hear more of Captain Johnson's story in the social exclusive interview on our Facebook page. Go to facebook.com/700 Club. Ron, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.